Here we have 3 old school Amiga joysticks, or Atari joysticks. They're the same. They all have the 9-pin DB9 connector. Some people call it that, some people say it's got another name. Looks like these two are digital micro switch, and this one is one of these classic Gravis analog. So this is an Epix 500XJ with its fire button stuck down and no handle. It actually comes with an auto fire function. We'll have to see. It really is kind of crappy to move that slider. This one doesn't have a brand on it, but I think, wait, here it is. Competition Pro joystick. Okay, yeah. There's been some emulators that actually have joysticks like this, but I bet you this one works. It's kind of bulletproof. The Gravis, yes. When this came out, I just had to have one, and this one isn't literally mine. I gave all my stuff, or I sold all my stuff away in the middle 90s, but this thing is quite complicated as far as it's got an adjustment that you can move, and it changes the tension of this stick. Yeah, here, let's see. The other two are garden variety, but this one is the most interesting. So it's got this disc inside that you can move, and in one position it's pretty much loosey-goosey, and then there's a position here which gives it a little, well, that doesn't really work. Obviously there's some springs involved inside that have somewhat worn themselves out. Yeah, actually. So this one could use some love too. Oh, there we go. That's better. That's not bad. And then it has you can actually get a screwdriver in there. I don't know if I ever did that, but yeah, I think that's the, is that the fine tune adjustment, or is it these over here? There's a way to make an adjustment so that the centering is correct. An analog joystick, sometimes the centering is a little bit difficult. And ideally, you know, the cursor would stop moving when you center the joystick, but if that's not the case, I believe that these adjustments are for that purpose. But there is also 2 adjustments here as well. Anyway, I might be wrong about that. It's been a long time. Yeah. Anyway, well, let's start with the one that probably works and probably doesn't need anything done to it, the Competition Pro. So we're playing P47 Thunderbolt. Over here in the States, where we all have NTSC Amigas, a lot of these games are in PAL, and it cuts off the bottom of the screen. I'm sure anybody... Oh, here we go. Okay, so the fire button, everything works except the fire button on the... Oh, there it goes. It's working now. It was sticky or something. Well, it would be real nice if you could outrun the bullets in this game. Essentially it works, just needs a clean. And we know that this one works, although you could use a clean. And there was something goofy with the contacts in there. So micro switches for the directional, but these this style of switches for the fire buttons. I don't know what they call those switches. Leave a comment if you do. What's this? There's a wire nut in here. I don't think that's factory. And there was a wire nut on there, guys. So I'd have to say somebody was in this joystick before. So I would assume that there's no solder on here. Yeah, there's no solder. What's weird is why would there be two different colors unless this was originally white and it got replaced. Yeah, so we'll throw some heat shrink on there. It's not a big deal. I don't see a reason to replace. I'm not going to be that anal retentive about color, wire color. But I'm just going to put some heat shrink and solder that thing together. I passed the wire underneath the switch. So the wire is that orange one under there. Or, yeah, right there. So you can see it's got some heat shrink on it. So we're just going to, yeah, one of these switches was a little goofy when I first started to test this joystick. So I'm just going to run some 600 sandpaper lightly on the contacts. Of the switches. There's just probably some tarnishing going on there. But the inside's not too dirty, not too bad. The outside could deal with the clean. Instead of using alcohol on the finish, which can do things to the look of the finish, it can whiten it, you know, it can dry it out or whatever. There's solutions for that if that happens, but I just have some Goo Gone. You can see that it shines it up pretty good at the same time. I want to definitely give it a good wipe when I'm done, because I don't want it does, you know, leave its own residue, and want to have a minimal amount of that on there to get on your hands. Okay, so I did test this Epix, and it works. The directional pad works. Obviously the left, or the main fire button is stuck down, and the auto fire button, or I remember the auto fire switch on these, because I had one of these as well, being just kind of stupid. Like it's just kind of hard to get into position, and it feels wonky. It feels kind of loose in there, and there's just such a small area. It's almost like they didn't put the area, the slot in the plastic big enough to slide this back and forth, and plus the fact it just kind of wiggles a little bit. So it's kind of hard to, you push it into the auto fire position and then it kind of comes back a little bit because it's just, yeah. So anyway, we'll take this apart and see what's going on. Oh, one thing I did off camera that I didn't show. All right, this label is, yeah, it's an okay, it's got a little rip here. This label is cool. I want to keep it. You know, I could use some technique on getting this decal off of here. It's covering the seam. The seam goes right down the middle. The thing comes apart like this. So what I decided to do is use an X-Acto knife, a hobby knife, and put a slice where the seam is, so that it would come apart and go back together. You know, I just don't know if this label would survive trying to get taken off. It's already got a rip in it here. It seems like it's very easily going to come off in pieces. So rather than mess with anything like that, I felt the safest thing to do. I mean, you could, you know, use steam on it or something, release the glue somehow, but I mean, the label is not in great condition, and I don't want to make it any worse. Can't really see the cut I made in it when it's together. So, all right. So let's put a little more light on the subject. The button is pretty gunky, and that's why this is stuck in. Oh yeah. So if somebody liked to eat while they played, you know, I'll admit to having done that myself. So yeah. But other than that, I mean, the micro switches do work. Everything just needs a really good cleaning. Ugh. Yeah, it's pretty disgusting. It's look at that. It's gross. Anyway, all right, so let me get set up here, and it's just not easy to operate these. Only the tip of this sticks out of the case, and it's really not easy to operate it in this fashion, but you know, I want to keep it original. The switch is a little bit moved to the side there, and it would work a lot better if it was just simply, you know, pushed that way, you know, in toward that. Then the switch would work a little better. I don't see anything blocking it from going in as far as, like, you know, something that's not supposed to be there. And like I said, I seem to remember these switches being kind of stupid when, you know, it's just a assembly or manufacturing tolerances being what they are, you know. So anyway, well, we'll give this a clean, and look at this. Looks like we're going to be soaking this in CLR, huh? It's got some rust, gucky stuff on it. Trusty jar of CLR. Just let that soak. And dry brush followed by alcohol brush. Try to get some of the alcohol to come out. I'm just using alcohol. Clean this with. This is all. It actually doesn't look too bad in here, and there's no problems with the directional. I think I'm just going to clean it from the outside. I'm going to go minimalist on this. Kind of looks to me like it's not really seated into the board right. It's kind of slanted this way. This side is higher up off the board than this side. And of course that's going to affect the position of the switch in exactly the fashion that we identified as being a problem. I'm going to be able to get to those solder joints from. Wonder if I should use a heat gun on that, because it's several joints, or if I should just go ahead and it's kind of going to be hard to get my solder removal tool. Well, I guess I could get it between these wires. All right, let's get at this thing with the solder sucker and straighten it out. So, you know, let me get something to point with. The thing that I really did notice, and I don't know if you could spot it earlier in the video, was that, you know, there's like a little corner here, and this corner was, that's how I sort of made a judgment call on whether this thing was actually sort of put together right. You know, there was a gap there, you know, pretty good size one. Yeah, I think that's where it was. So there's well, not a super, like maybe a 0.5 millimeter or something. But now you can push it down and help us out a little bit as far as the orientation of the switch. So, focus. All right, so I'm going to just go ahead and throw some solder on these joints while compressing this, pushing this down or whatever. And hopefully that switch operates better. There we go. So that's a bit better. Still, no, I'm still not lined up. Okay. All right, so let's see if we can get a good shot of this. All right, so there's a little lip there. So basically the frame goes and rests against this part right here. And this little piece, tiny piece of plastic that's sticking up is keeping it from going this way when I'm trying to put it together. Well, even after it's put together to keep it. That's not a whole lot of, that's not very substantial. And of course there's two little nubs here which go just to the outside of those double frame things. Just goes right there to keep it from going up and down. Yeah, they could have designed it better. Yeah, you see how that is right there? That's one side, and you can see the other side. Same thing. So just not much holding it in there. That'll be okay. All right, so the other thing I could do would be to add some hot melt glue under the fire micro switches, just to keep it this way. And when I do that, I'm going to have to close the case. Okay, so I did find something. I don't know how I missed it actually. I was concentrating on this half of the shell, you know, but this one with the triggers in it, this one has broken pieces. Let's make sure that's in focus. Right there and right there. And that's causing the whole thing to be shifted over that way and the source of all our problems. And you know what, it's kind of a familiar sounding, it kind of sounds familiar to me because, you know, I had one of these and it seems like I've seen that before. Like maybe it's a pretty chronic problem with these or whatever. So anyway, as you can see, I've started to, or as you could see, as you did see, you can see I'm starting to put a layer of hot melt glue in there to hold things securely. What I'd started to do was put hot melt glue under the micro switches. So I got 2 dabs of glue under there. That's going to push this side up. Okay, so because this whole frame is supported by these switches, which normally don't touch the bottom of the case, but in this case they do, because I've added some gap filling material, some hot melt glue to both of these, thus making this assembly, making it so the assembly can't be pushed that way, and thus replicating what these 2 tabs were doing. I really couldn't think of anything where I could build these tabs back up because these buttons are right in the way. So I just felt that making this assembly stay in place from underneath was the right way to go. Hopefully it is. I mean, maybe if you get real violent with it, it'll somehow crack something in here or something because all the pressure's on the switches now, but you know, I don't know. I mean, the thing, it's got to be better than it was. At least we can say that. So now that we've got that there, we can close them, and we've got this. Right, that works, and the switch beautifully actually is a lot more positive feeling. The assembly inside still moves a slight bit, but nothing compared to how much it was. So let's move on to the joystick. Corrosion seems to be gone, or rust or whatever. It's definitely permanently tarnished with age, but I mean, feeling it, it doesn't have any rough. It's very smooth, which is a good indication that the rust has been removed. This has a knurled end where the actual joystick, the plastic part, goes. That's long gone. I didn't get it with this joystick. So it's a good job for a 3D printer, I'd say. So make one that's factory looking, I guess. It's a good thing I have another one of these. It's not the one with the rapid fire, but it's a regular one. So I can take measurements from that and model them and make a model on my 3D printer, and yeah, much better than getting thrown away. The whole joystick, that is. So here's one, another one just like it, except it doesn't have the auto fire, and this one was covered with that rubbery material that helps you grip or whatever, but that stuff gets dirty and it discolors and it looks gross. So I just peeled it off. It took a while too. But again, I'm trying to save joysticks, you know, I don't want to throw them away. This one, anybody would have thrown this one away. It's not even an auto fire, it's only got one button. But heck, it works good. So anyway, so I want to take measurements of this and make us another one. Okay, so here we have the object almost completed. I like to use a sphere to get my curves right. I just created a flat spline to begin with. Took all the dimensions from the joystick and cut them in half and made a flat piece of the pie, you might say. And the sphere helped me make a nice curve. And this is taking measurements from an existing Epix joystick, but this particular one that I have doesn't have the flare at the bottom. So I had to sort of look at pictures and guess, and it's kind of a, it's not really a curved, it's got kind of a sharp turn here and a somewhat sharp turn there, although I rounded it off a little bit. And then it has a recess under here a little bit. Anyway, so we don't need this anymore. Let me just save this. So we're just going to, now I've got to make sure that the axis is on this piece right here on the very center before we apply the lattice. I'm sorry, the lattice, I keep getting it confused, the lathe. And so here's the lathe modifier applied. There's a similar feature in other programs. It's a 360, so we want to change that to 180. You can't see what I'm doing, but anyway. It's upside down, but that's okay. And it doesn't matter what I do to tweak the settings, it's always going to look like this, some kind of weird part about the scale. That's okay, because as you can see up here, it's going to look pretty good. We just need to rescale it. So let me go ahead and, I don't like to use the mirror. I've had problems with mirror when it comes to 3D objects. So I'm just going to rotate the guy around 180. So now he's in the correct orientation that we like him. And then we're just going to scale. All we have to do is scale, and we'll get down to the right shape. All right, so that's basically it. We have half of our joystick, and you know, a lot of people would attempt to print this as one object. I am not in the camp of doing that. The factory Epix joystick is injection molded, and it's injection molded with two halves, the upper half and the bottom half. So you can actually see the seam going through the middle of it like this. So, I mean, I almost think this is more realistic or authentic. And plus, printing it out like this is going to make a much better looking object. And all you got to do is slap them together with some super glue. Who knows if the dimensions are perfect. Usually when I print something out, oozing from the printer causes things to be smaller. You know, cavities like this become smaller, but that better to be too small than too big, because then we can always hone this out. Okay, this doesn't have the guts in it, it's just the shaft, so we're just gonna test it. Here's the end result of the 3D printing, by the way. So as you can see, there's a, you know, pretty easily printable thing, and the layers are going in this direction. If you had printed it in this way or this way, the layer adhesion vertically is not very good. This would snap in half quite easily. And I still don't understand why some people insist on having to print things vertically. I'm not, you know, I just don't understand it. What's wrong with making? So there's an aversion to printing things in more than one piece. They always got to be in just one piece, one print. It's like you're gonna have to refinish it anyway. So here we go. Looks pretty good, yeah. One thing you need to do when you 3D print something is the first layer, in order for the part to adhere to the bed, it's got the first layer height and or the first layer amount of extrusion is increased to create some sort of a lip. So just going to scrape along that edge just to take that little bit of whatever off. Yeah, and now it sits down in there lower. Yeah, there we go. So that's pretty tight. I kind of wished it was a little tighter, but just hoping that super glue is going to be usable. Well, in this case, CA glue, which is what I always use. Same thing. So we're going to take the shaft and just going to stick it in there and kind of, you know, the knurled part of the shaft is really working in our favor here. It's really keeping it from rotating. I think this is going to work pretty well. So the only other thing I probably need to grab is some rubber bands to hold this in place. Okay. And I have to eyeball the alignment here. Get it really close if I can. Getting tagged with glue already. A little bit of overflow. Get on there. Yeah, I think that's pretty good. Pretty good. I would have liked to have had a lighter color red, but certainly not bad for something that used to be black and used to be nothing. I created it out of nothing. So that one's good to go.